I really like your therapeutic way of dealing with it. Is you just got to get out in nature, be around animals. That is very helpful for a lot of kids. And I think you and I have talked about this before. That just kind of being around a horse when it's eating is like just a very peaceful kind of experience. It's like soul enriching.
It even goes to taking care of a horse. When we got to groom a horse and get them ready to do something, taking care of something else, another living soul. Mm-hmm. Puts you in a stance of a caregiver instead of being the person being cared for. And that change of perspective shifts inside the kid. My wife's doing a lot of equine coaching now with kids, and when you watch these kids take this one thought of themselves and it's transformed because this horse, and I don't know why horses do this, but they figure out how to get inside a kid's head and live there rent-free for a while.
Really?
But yeah, there's times when I've seen a horse hug a kid, and I've seen a horse block a kid from moving forward, and the right people will sit there and say, hey, what do you think that horse is trying to tell you? And one kid just looked up and said that I'm getting in my own way.
Oh,
yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I get to watch all this, I get paid to watch all this for a living, and what you see is that all of us, I mean, I don't know what you were like in high school. I know what I was like in high school. I wasn't 100% awesome all the time. And so we got to outlive our high school so we can look back and look at ourselves through our 30-year-old lens and say, you know what? I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be this person.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
Give kids that shot at 14 or 15. They get a jump start on being able to do that.
Right. And it's a terrible feeling to be, 14, 15, 16 years old. Sometimes you can make some very drastic decisions that will affect the rest of your life at that particular time. And to feel that you have no more options, that must just be kind of devastating.
Yeah, and if you get down to the rational side of it, which I hate to interject rationale into this, but if you get 7.5 billion people on the planet and you got 15 popular kids at your school that are defining how you feel about yourself, when you take a look at that from an adult perspective, you say, that's silly.
Yeah.
But as a kid, those 15 people matter more than anything else.
It's the whole world. I mean, you have a very hard time. I mean, first of all, with just kind of coming up with the concept of time and how quickly time is moving versus when you're younger and you just feel like it's so slow, it's just taking forever.
Oh, yeah.
But now we can look back and be like, man, where'd time go? I mean, it was just a flash, and we're way beyond high school.
When I was in freshman, I thought it was going to be forever until I became a senior.
It just feels that way. A month's time when you're a teenager feels pretty bad. So if you're struggling with stuff on top of just being a teenager, experiencing things for the first time, it can be pretty daunting. And you see a lot of those cases.
Yeah, the kids that I deal with a lot focus on what's different about them than the kids that they deem as popular or successful or happy.
Yeah.
So whether they're struggling with what kind of person they want to be, whether they're struggling with how they fit in based on their ethnicity or race, whether they're poor and rich is a huge one. Kids that feel like they're the poor kid and they're looked down upon for their parents not having as much money as the rich kids to get the BMW. And so I'm a graduate of Lefebvre High School. I remember walking into school and I didn't even know it was an option to get a BMW. So when we focus on that difference, and what we try to do is say, instead of focusing on that thing that makes you feel the most different, let's focus on what we're grateful for. Mm-hmm. From a psychological perspective, if you spend 21 days at the end of every day thinking of the 3 things you're most grateful for in that day, your brain rewires in 21 days to be a more grateful person and to also see more happiness and goodness in the world.
That's I really like that you mentioned that, Heath, because I've heard this before, that it takes 21 days to establish or break a habit. Mm-hmm. You think that's true?
Absolutely.
And so this is kind of maybe just a way to change your thought process and bring out some changes in your life, some positive kind of reinforcement.
Yeah,
21 days of just saying nice things.
Yeah, I used to not be in the social media world at all, and then thanks to marketing people. Yeah, got so, I should be in the social media thing. I didn't realize the cesspool of hatred that exists on social media.
Yeah, it can get pretty bad, can't it?
Yeah, and so I think I try to stay positive, and I try to look at I try to produce content for social media that is hopefully enriching to somebody's life. But if I start delving into the comments or getting, particularly Twitter, I think you can see just the worst side of human beings, and if you get in the habit of noticing that, it's like if you're looking for a yellow car, it's easy to spot every yellow car. If you're looking for negativity, it's easy to find.
Easy to pull it to you.
Yeah. And, I mean, I remember the old days when you got out of school You went home, there was not a way to contact your friends till the next day unless it was a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can all be in a group chat, you can all, and I see adults doing this too, so I don't want to.
Yeah, it's not just the kids. Yeah.
We call it, fantasy sports, but just a better group chat.
Just a thing.
But yeah, if we look for the negativity, if we look for all of that, and as an adult male, I have learned how to process out negative comments from people that I don't trust.
It's not always easy.
No.
And sometimes people will come at you with a negative comment, and maybe it's valid. We don't know these people. So maybe it is valid from whatever their experience is of the day. But they can do it in such a way that it'll really affect you for the rest of your day and maybe on through the week. Sometimes.
Yeah, and if you look at you, you're a painfully positive figure in New Mexico. you tune in and Donnie's on the radio, that's going to be a positive experience. I've never tuned in and been like, wow, this is horrible. But even you have people that aren't fans,
right?
For whatever reason.
Sure.
And if there's a grain of truth in it, if it's because of something you said or an opinion you hold, then you can kind of say, okay, I can understand why they differ on that opinion. But if it's because you're an awful person, if you're not kind of in a mature mindset, you can't filter out the awful person part from the I disagree with your opinion part.
Are you saying like the person that is just an awful person and decides to take out their life's aggressions on you?
The therapists among us would call that projection.
Projection, yes. I have a feeling we need to sit down and talk to you more about these kind of things, just kind of like delve in there as far as the way people treat each other. You probably see a lot of different kind of personalities and different types of ways to deal with personalities out at the ranch.
Yeah, we and this is not meant disrespectfully in any way, but we call it the Cardi B effect. If I'm yelling loudest, I'm the rightest.
Okay.
That's one youth thought process right now. We also have the more sullen, loner thought process. But you see all these different people, and what they're trying to do is get their needs met.
Sure.
And if you've gotten your needs met by being, positive and energetic and hopeful on the radio every day, that's your go-to.
Yeah.
If you've gotten your needs met by cutting or threatening to commit suicide or, not going to school, then that becomes your go-to. And that 21 days to get a different go-to is super important.
Sure.
If you were to give up radio today, you would go through a grief process because it's who you are today.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean who you are for your entire life, but today you're a radio personality. You spend the majority of your time behind a microphone. If you just give that up, there would be grief. There would be a sense of identity being lost. There would be all these kinds of things, and we don't apply that to kids. If they have to give up football because of an injury, or if they have to give up choir because they get cut, or they don't make a team, that can really damage their identity. And it doesn't mean they need to live there, but they certainly need somebody to walk through the grief with them and say, I get it. This sucks.
Now, if they don't start walking through the grief, it's not like in 21 days they're going to feel better, right? They're going to have to address it some way, mindfully, over that 21-day period, right?
Yeah, you have to really train your brain to understand that you are allowed to feel sad because you lost something. You're allowed to have moments of weakness where you kind of lash out at people because you were sad. I mean, if you look at, there's some great movie scenes, the Weezer funeral scene.
Oh, I love that from Steel Magnolias.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
All of those grief things are okay, but a lot of times we have very little compassion for ourselves and we judge ourselves most harshly. And the world will pile on if we want them to. If you go out there and say, I'm a terrible person, you'll find somebody say, yeah, I don't even know you, but I agree. And so getting kids to the point where they say, you know what, I'm allowed to feel sad because my parents got divorced. I'm allowed to be in a grief process because they're not together anymore. It doesn't mean I can treat everybody like crap. It doesn't mean I don't need to go to school. But I'm allowed to have this moment. And a lot of times in today's culture, we teach kids and adults to bury their emotions. And what we found is those emotions come roaring back at some point in really ugly ways if you do that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at there, is that if you don't process things as they come about, which is, that's hard to do, right? Because life will do, seems like life is going to give you something that you feel like you weren't ready for. And I think all of us, if we had an opportunity to put certain things aside, maybe we would, right? But sometimes you have to deal with it head on as it comes, and then if you don't, like you just said, years down the road, and it can be 20 years down the road, that you'll start suffering or just kind of start dealing with something that happened all those years ago that you didn't really process.
Yeah, and it happens to